Hello students, I'm the tech engineer and welcome to my lab. So today we're talking about recovery frames. So Kazuya does an electric, he needs to recover after the electric, and the time it takes for him to recover are your recovery frames. Well, we can go a bit more in depth about this, so that's the first part of the video, and then the second part is about whether you actually need to know recovery frames of every move. Is it useful to know recovery frames? And once we think that it's important to know recovery frames, then we go to the third part, and that is how do you actually know recovery frames? Because if you see here, Tekken doesn't really give you recovery frames. It just gives you the startup frames, it gives you the frame advantage, but you don't know how long it takes for you to recover. And well, we can measure this, but we need to do it in practice mode, and we can do it with Jin's parry. It's a bit tricky, but you'll understand and I'll explain it to you. So I hope at the end of the video you'll understand that an electric is a beast of a keep out move, but actually Paul's backsway 4 is a freaking demon. Fight! So let's talk frames first. So a frame is 1/60th of a second because your game is running at 60 frames per second. A frame is actually just a really small amount of time, and if you do a move, then your move takes a few frames to come out. So here you have a nice Street Fighter shot with Ryu's crouching strong coming out. It takes him 4 frames for the move to come out. After he does the move, then you have a few active frames, meaning those 4 frames, those 4 red active frames, are the frames where you can hit the other guy. So he does the move, he goes into the pose, and there you can hit the other guy for 4 frames. Now in Tekken, those active frames are most of the time a bit shorter. It's more like 1, 2, maybe sometimes 3, but more like 1 or 2 frames. And then after your active frames are actually the frames we want to talk about, and those are the recovery frames. So you go from your active hit frames to recovering back to your normal rest position. So here for Ryu it only takes 6 frames. Now in Tekken the startup frames and the recovery frames are way longer. So as you might know, a jab takes 10 frames to start up, and actually to recover it takes 16 frames. So now let's put this in practice. So Kazuya is going to do a few electrics or win Godfist based on how good I am, and then you'll see he puts his arm up, those are the startup frames, and then you have 2 active frames where he can hit the opponent, and then he's going to put his arm down for the recovery frame. Now these frames are always the same, so your startup frames, your active frames and your recovery frames will always be the same. Even though I hit the other guy, even though the other guy blocks my move, even though I miss the other guy, they will always be the same. So some people will say that recovery frames on Whiff are way longer than if the other guy blocks the move. Well, this is not really correct. Your recovery frames will stay the same, but if the other guy is blocking moves, he's also recovering. So in that way, I'll show you to you in the chart. In that way, he's actually recovering slower than if you whiff the move, because if you whiff the move, he's not recovering at all. So here you have Ryu doing the move, but now Dhalsim is in the mix and he's actually hit by the move. So what happens is Ryu does the startup, Dhalsim gets hit, and Dhalsim takes himself into a recovery animation because he is hit. So while Ryu is recovering, while he has his active frames and has his recovery frames, Dhalsim is actually in some kind of stun. This is fully the same with Kazuya and Paul. So Kazuya does his electric, Paul blocks the move, and while Kazuya is going into his recovery, Paul blocks the move and he needs to go into some recovery block stun. And here you get the interaction where Kazuya is recovering, Paul is also recovering, but Kazuya is, because he's doing an electric, he's recovering faster than Paul, and that's why you get +5 on block. So when people say your recovery on whiff is slower than on block, they actually mean that if you whiff a move, the opponent can just still move, but if the other guy blocks the move, then he goes into some kind of stun himself. Now, why do recovery frames actually matter? What is the situation where you want slow recovery frames in? Well, first of all, if you're doing combos, then you might want to do electrics, because electrics recover faster. They're also more damaging, but they recover faster, which means you can follow up with different moves than with just doing normal win Godfist. So if you're a combo maker, then I think you need to have some knowledge of recovery frames, just because yeah, your moves need to recover fast. But this is the most insignificant one, I think, because yeah, normal people will just take combos of the internet. The other reason it matters is for whiff punishing. So if you see the recovery frames of a backsway 4 or a down forward 2 of Paul, you see he recovers way faster than a dead fist. So if you're playing against a Paul and he does a back sway 4, then yeah, you might need to second guess yourself whether you want to whiff punish that, because if you miss your whiff punish, then he might punish you yourself or he might whiff punish you. So what you kind of know is that if he does a dead fist, then you can whiff punish that, because it takes a lot of frames for him to recover from the dead fist. This is something you can just find yourself by playing. So whether this takes 45 frames to recover and this 26 frames to recover, well, that is not something that is really important for you. You just see that the other one takes a lot more frames to recover. Now, what I think is the most important thing to test recovery frames for is for your own keep out game. So if the Paul player is constantly running in and doing moves, I want to keep him out. I have a few options as a Kazuya player. I want a counter hitting tool or I want a launching tool. So you can say you have an electric to keep him out. You can also use a down forward 2. And I was using down forward 2 a lot. But now I looked up the recovery frames and a down forward 2 recovers actually pretty slow. Way slower than an electric. So that means that if the Paul player is coming in and I miss my down forward 2, he has way more time to whiff punish me. So it's just to know for sure which move is your best keep out move. Now I'm second guessing if I want to use down forward 2. I might even use a down forward 1 here, or this thing, down forward 1-4, just because a down forward 1's recovery is really fast, actually faster than the electric. So I think having good knowledge about the recovery frames of your keep out tools is important as a player, and I think this is why you should look up the recovery frames of your moves. So now we know what recovery frames are, and also you know why you would need recovery frames. But the third thing is, how do you actually get those recovery frames from your moves? Well, you know Tekken doesn't give you this, right? So as I explained, Tekken doesn't show the data for this. And also if you go to the most popular frame data site, RB Norway, there you don't have recovery frames either. There are some smaller sites that give recovery frames. But let's look at a way that we can calculate recovery frames in practice mode, and that is with this guy, it's Jin. And how are we going to do it with Jin? Well, Jin has this really great thing and it's called a parry. Now Jin's parry is completely based on recovery frames. So whether you can punish a move with a 2-4, which is 10 frames fast, or with a down 3+4, completely depends on how many recovery frames the other guy's move had. This is because just as if you get a whiff or if you get a block, the move the other guy did is not going to change. So his startup frames, his active frames and his recovery frames are always the same. So I'll show this here. Kazuya is going to do 3 down forward 1s. And the first one is going to whiff, the second one I'll block, and the third one I'm going to parry. And you will see that it doesn't matter what you do, the animation of Kazuya's move, his down forward 1, will always be the same. So let's do this. So he whiffs, I block, and I parry, and it's always the same. So he completely gets the same animation. Now the animation for Jin's parry is always the same frames. So if I parry with Jin, his parry takes 14 frames. So it's always going to be 14 frames until he can attack. And that is the base of why you can measure recovery frames with him. So now let's try to find out what Kazuya's down forward 1 recovery frames are, since we're already working with Kazuya's down forward 1. Well, the thing is, we want to get a situation where Jin can parry Kazuya's move. Now Jin's parry comes out really fast. It's between 2 and 8 frames, so it's faster than a jab. What I suggest is you set Kazuya to do a jab into a down forward 1 and then block. So the jab into the down forward 1, why are we doing this? Well, if you block the jab and then you parry, the thing is you'll see that your parry will have worked out and this will not work for you, like this. So what you do is you get hit by the jab, and if you get hit by the jab you will be able to parry most moves, and otherwise you need to time it. So let's go with Jin from fast moves to slower moves, and the fastest move of Jin is his jab. It's 10 frames, so we're going to let Kazuya do this. We get hit, parry, and then the jab, and we see Kazuya hasn't recovered yet, so with the jab we'll just hit. So now we go with a slower move, 11 frames, but Jin doesn't have an 11 frame move sadly, so we go with his 1+2, which is 12 frames. So we jab, and then you see this still hits, so Kazuya didn't recover yet. He has a 13 frame move in his down forward 1, down forward 1-4, so let's try that. And now you see Kazuya actually blocks this. So you can see that with a 12 frame move we can still hit him, and with a 13 frame move he's recovered already. So now we know Jin's parry is 14 frames, and after a 12 frame move he's just almost recovered but not yet. So let's put this in my favorite program. So we have Paint, we get Jin, we have Kazuya, and we see that Jin's first frame of his parry, so first frame of the parry, trades with Kazuya's first frame, not of his move, because he did his move, it's 15 frames, but then he hits you, so his first active frame. Active. So yeah, we know this. Now we know that Jin's parry takes 14 frames, so we have 14 frames. And then we know that with a 12 frame move, Kazuya was just not yet recovered. So 12 frames plus 12, we get 16. We get 26. So 26, we look at this hub 26. And that means that between the first active frame and the 26th frame at which he's just not recovered, we have 25 frames. So these 25 frames, they are, let's take red, your recovery frames. So how do you know that I am not a complete liar, that I'm just inventing stuff? Well, I got TekkenBotPrime here, and TekkenBotPrime here in the bottom is a frame data overlay. It just gives you frame data. Before we had the detailed frame data here on the screen, we needed to use TekkenBotPrime or RB Norway aside, but this gives you frame data in game. So if I do a move like, let's say, a 4, you can see you get the frame data here. What do you get? Well, you get startup frames, and then you get the active frames, the amount of active frames you have. If this is 1, 1 or 1, 2, if this is 1, 2, then you get 2 active frames, and you hit him at the first active frame. So you have 1, 2 or 2, 2, and that's the second active frame where you hit him at. Then the total amount of frames are startup frames plus active frames plus your recovery frames. So this rec is actually your recovery frames. So now let's just see if we do a down forward one, what we get. We should get 25 frames, right? So we do this and you see here recovery frames and you see 24, so I'm a complete liar. Well, that's not really the case. So if we look at Paint and we see 25 frames, and in TekkenBotPrime we have 24 frames. Well, this is because I'm actually just counting one active frame. So I said your first parry frame trades with one active frame, and then I did 26 minus 1 is 25 frames. Now TekkenBotPrime shows here that down forward 1 actually has 2 active frames. So if I would do 26 frames minus 2, you would get the 24 frames. Let's do this again, but this time with a move with only one active frame, so we know for sure. Well, Kazuya has his standing 4. If the opponent blocks it, you can see here we have 27 recovery frames. It's important that you are playing Kazuya when you're trying this, and that you put the opponent on guarding, because this means that you get 27 recovery frames. If you put him on just standing and you hit him, he gets 26 recovery frames. I don't think this is right, so it's important that you're letting the other guy block. And the other thing that's important is that you're the guy playing Kazuya, so if the other guy is doing while standing force, whether it hits or you block it, you get 26 frames. But I think this is wrong. I think based on the total frames and the calculations I did, I think the right frames are the ones where you are playing Kazuya and the other Kazuya is blocking your move. So we cleared up the Paint and we set Kazuya to do a jab into 4 into block. So what we do is we get hit by the jab, we parry him, and we'll see when he recovers. So parry, down forward 1 still hits. So 13 frames will still hit. Now let's try 14 frames. Oh, forward 1 plus 2. And we'll see this still hits. Yes. And now we do a down 3 plus 4 or a hop kick. Oh. And we'll see this gets blocked. And the forward 1 plus 2 will still hit. So now we know 14 frames. So we take the Paint and we get 1 parry frame from Jim, first active frame from Kazuya. And then we go to 14 frames. And then we get 14 from the forward 1 plus 2. So you get 28. We put that here at Kazuya, because this is right before he recovers, and then we'll see 27 recovery frames because this is the first active frame. So you get 27 frames. So now let's look at Kazuya's iconic keep out tool, the electric. So we set this up, we get a down forward 1 and the down forward 1 will still hit. Okay, forward 1 plus 2 will still hit. And down 3 plus 4 will not hit, it will get blocked. So we know here that the electric and the Magic 4 of Kazuya actually have the same recovery frames. So now you know the recovery frames of those moves and you'll see which keep out move you like the most based on recovery frames and properties. Because they have the same recovery frames, you can look at the properties and you'll see an electric is a bit slower, but it has, yeah, it launches on normal hit, it's +5 on block. So yeah, the electric is a great keep out tool. But now let's look at Paul here, because this guy, if you come across him online, there are a lot of players just running back, doing down forward 2s from far away and doing backsway 4s. Just like people with Kazuya just throw out electrics from far away. So we recorded Paul doing down forward 1 into 4. So let's do just a jab, this will hit him, a 1 plus 2 will also hit him, a down forward 1, and now the forward 1 plus 2, and we see it gets blocked. So while the electric got hit there, the backsway 4 will just get blocked. This means if we look at the paint again, this one is not 14 frames, but it's 13 frames. Because the down forward 1 was the last one to hit. And then we get here 27 frames, which means 27, we actually have 26 frames for Paul's backsway 4 to recover. So it recovers 1 frame faster than the electric wind godfist, which is crazy. Backsway 4 also is a move with huge range. It also doesn't put Paul really close to the opponent, so he does the move but he stays far back. And on counter hit, because it's a keep out tool, counter hit is important. On counter hit it launches, and it's also +1 on block. So this move is completely crazy. The only bad side it has is that the thing is a high. So now let's try the same thing for Paul's down forward 2. So we block here and we... Oh, sorry, I didn't parry. Parry, 1 plus 2, it does hit. Forward 1, it does hit. And forward 1 plus 2. And you see this gets also blocked. So this one is also 26 frames in recovery, also 1 frame faster than the electric. But this one is mid and it's safe. So these were the basics of using Jin's parry to calculate recovery frames. Keep in mind that you're only counting 1 active frame and that you're seeing the rest of the move as recovery frames. Now a problem you might have is that you don't know the frames of Jin's moves. So we'll go over this just fast. 10 frames, 11 frames doesn't have that, 1 plus 2 is 12, forward 1, 13, forward 1 plus 2 is 14, down forward 3 plus 4, 15, and now 16 frames, back 3. This one is 16, 17, back 4, 18 it doesn't have it, 19 if you're lucky, down back 3. This one says 20, but it can hit at 19 frames. If you want to hit at 20 frames, down forward 4, then 21 frames, down 1, and then you have these weird moves with down forward 1 plus 2 hits at 23 frames, and down back 1 plus 2 hits at 25 frames. Now one last thing I want to go over is checking the recovery frames of a jab or fast recovering moves, really fast recovering moves. So if you have a jab, if we do this and we see and we parry this, then you can see he can actually block our jab. So this means that he can actually just block it and our technique won't work. So this is where you actually do a move with Kazuya, you do a move with Jin after the jab gets parried, and then you see the recovery frames. So we'll take a clean paint here and we'll set Kazuya up to do jab, jab, jab. Okay, so we're going to parry the second jab and then we're going to do a move. So jab, parry, so jab, hit, parry, and then move. So our jab comes out first. That means Kazuya is not recovered yet. Is still in the jab motion, I mean. And then the 1 plus 2 will also let him be in the jab motion. But our down forward 1 here, as you can see, will trade. Let's put this in paint. So we have Jin here and Kazuya. And Jin, he did his parry, so he goes from 1 to 14 frames. Jin's parry traded with Kazuya's second jab. So we have here this second jab trades with Jin's first parry frame. So the first active frame of Kazuya's jab trades here. Then we have the 14 frames. Jin does a down forward 1 plus 13 to trade with Kazuya's third jab, right? So you have parry, parry, and then down forward 1. So here you trade with Kazuya's jab. So you get 27 frames also for Kazuya. This is where he trades. So this is his first active frame of his last jab. He's trading on his first active frame of his last jab. So this is a jab. Here we know minus 10 frames because a jab is 10 frames. So we get 17 frames. So at 17 frames, Kazuya was able to start up his third jab. So this means that after his parried jab, he still had, actually to the other side, so he's still at minus 16 frames here. And those 60 frames are 60 frames of recovery Kazuya still has. So if we open TekkenBotPrime and we look at a block jab, so we're going to let Kazuya block here, and Jin's block jab is 16 frames in recovery, as you can see here. So yeah, this is the way you calculate the recovery of really fast recovering moves, but I don't know if there's a move actually recovering as fast as a jab. So it might be that you can just always use the normal way of calculating this, and you just remember that a jab has 16 frames in recovery. So this is the end of my video about recovery frames. Recovery frames is a pretty complex subject. Frames in general is a pretty complex subject. But yeah, the game is running on frames, so you better know frames. If you really didn't understand anything here, well, you can always look at some frame tutorials, because there are a lot of people already discussing frames, and they do a great job there. So if you liked the video, if you really enjoyed the video, then please subscribe. I do a lot of Tekken content, a lot of Tekken tutorials. Please go look at them on my channel, and see you guys next time.